John is back on the line. John, you were just about to tell us what you were shocked about.
I was shocked that the Whip's office are deciding to use public money to threaten MPs. There's always been threats around promotions, threats around deselections, which are party business, threats around little black books and stories. But this government tries to bribe voters with their own money, bribing taxpayers with their own money, giving money to the red wall seats that have been won by the Tories. They're really explicit about it. They say, vote for a Tory mayor and you will get a free port. And now what they're doing is apparently they're telling MPs, you'll not get your school, you won't get your hospital upgrade, you won't get this unless you do what we want. And that is actually corruption. It is a breach of parliamentary privilege. I'm not surprised the Metropolitan Police are investigating. And I am surprised they have just let themselves go this far, because you know how easily scared other MPs are. You don't need to go that far with them. So why break the law when you don't have to?
Are you sure they did? Have you seen any evidence, John?
I haven't, but I have heard what Christian Wakeford said, that he was told explicitly by the then Secretary of State for Education, and I've heard Chris Bryant, who's in charge of the standards processes in Parliament. I'm told, I've heard him say a dozen Tories have spoken to him. So I think he's taking it seriously and going to be investigating it in terms of the Commons and breach of Commons privilege. So, and it does feel to me in character with them. If they're willing to say explicitly to voters, vote for us and you get pork, I'm certain that behind the scenes they go to the MPs. We promised your voters this pork. You promised it. We'll take it away from you unless you behave.
Isn't pork barreling the very stuff of politics?
It hasn't been until now. Every allocation of government funding, even under the Cameron government, was by a formula that's published. And the Towns Fund, which gave no money to Barnsley, but gave money to Rishi Sunak's Richmond, is possibly the most obvious one. And the head of the department, when he was interviewed by MPs, said, well, deprivation wasn't actually one of the things we considered. We considered travel to work area and transport links. So Richmond, being rural, had fewer buses than Barnsley, being urban, and so therefore got the money. So there was some fiddling at the edges, which even the civil service were getting embarrassed about trying to justify.
You mentioned Drakeford, is it, the Bury South MP? He did say that, but he also said to his voters he was a Tory just 2 years ago, and now it turns out he isn't. Don't you think he should step down and fight a by-election in his constituency?
I think it would be hilarious if he did, because the swing to Labour would be massive, because he would be imposed by the NEC by-election panel, so he'd be the Labour candidate. But look, I think in the end, electors choose MPs to represent them, and they vote for them with their judgment. Christian Wakeford has decided it's not in the interest of Bury South for there to be a continuation of a Tory government. I mean, I think it probably is, as your caller said, is in the interest of the Labour Party for Boris Johnson to stay as long as possible as Prime Minister. But Christian Wakeford was obviously trying to pull the last wooden piece out of the Jenga tower to make the whole thing collapse. And I feel, look, we don't have a tradition in this country of automatic by-elections, and I think that would give an amazing power, wouldn't it, to the whips? If you said that when you were no longer in the parliamentary party that you were elected for, you had to have a by-election, the whips could just take the whip away from you, and there'd be an automatic by-election. So I think, again, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, we'll come back to how likely the whole thing falling is likely to be. But I wanted to get your, not unique, of course, there have been many people have worked in Downing Street, but uniquely on this show, you didn't live in Downing Street, but you worked all the hours that God sent there. How different from the Downing Street you worked in is the Downing Street you now catch glimpses of in Partygate?
Well, we didn't have wine fridges or beer fridges under our desks. we didn't drink in the garden. I think I was in the garden 3 times, once for the leaving party, once for a summer party, and once for a photograph with the Prime Minister. And the one time I do remember drunkenness in the gardens was when the England Test cricket team came to celebrate their great victory, and they were absolutely plastered, having had a night of drinking. They had to be steered off the wall on their way out to the garden. We had to go out for extra beer for them, and they played on Leo's play equipment. But it was such a rarity. I had an office which looked onto the garden. I would not have dared to walk out into the garden. The garden doesn't belong to the office. The garden belongs to the Prime Minister and his flat, and of course shared with Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, who has apparently not seen anything going on in Number 10 over this period. But this culture that they've got of breaking rules, of drinking, of partying. I mean, I'm a Republican, but I have to say I was scunnered by the story of them partying the night before Prince Philip's funeral, particularly when you hear that the Queen herself said she would not wish to have any lifting of the rules for herself. And so this kind of contempt for everybody.
He wasn't, to be fair, John, the Prime Minister wasn't there. He was recuperating in Chequers at that time.
No, but he said, clearly the culture was, we can party when we want. And I think, I'm sure that he will try and say, put all the worst things we'll say were done when he wasn't there. But, you know, it beggars belief that he walked out to people drinking and eating crisps and peanuts and sausage rolls from the local Tesco and thought he was going to a work event, stayed there for 25 minutes. It's, the one thing all voters know about Boris Johnson is he knows how to party. So a man who knows how to party must recognise a party.
No, I agree. It all reads to me as a non-drinker. It's like a Great Gatsby chapter. These born to rule individuals carousing at the public expense on public property. If I was running Downing Street, it would be an alcohol-free zone, as you know. But the hypocrisy that is sensed by some is that other political parties were also drinking on public property, also in close proximity to their fellows at the very same time during lockdown.
I'm not sure there were people doing that. That was he was actually working with an MP and had a beer with his meal, all of which was actually within the rules.
You're sure?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure.
Let's move on then. Your loyalty is admirable. You're playing with a straight bat. So let me ask you, with a straight bat, do you really think that the future of this country is going to be decided this week by a woman that I personally had never heard of before, a Ms. Sue Gray? Is that right?
The future of the country, the future of the Prime Minister, is rightly in the hands of the House of Commons and in the hands of the majority party in the House of Commons, the Conservative Party. I fully expect Sue Gray, who I worked with when I was a Number 10 and who's an honourable and decent civil servant, to actually do the most damning thing she could do. Not draw a judgment on Boris Johnson, but lay out the facts. Just who did what and when, who said what and when, and against those two timelines, have another timeline, which is what were the rules in force in the country at the time. And in a case like this, you don't need to lead the jury. You don't need to gild the lily. The facts, I believe, will be damning in themselves, and it will be a judgment on the Conservative Party if the MPs decide, for all the reasons they're running around with at the moment, not to take action against a Prime Minister who will be shown to have broken the rules. And there'll be lots of attempts to get this on a technicality, but in the end, you know, the thing that should be said of a Prime Minister is the buck stops with the Prime Minister. And we have a Prime Minister at the moment who wants the buck to stop with anybody apart from him. And the question is, he's sacrificed many other people's careers to the advancement of his. Is he going to be allowed by the Tory party to sacrifice the Tory party to his career?
What's your instinct then? The Tories, as we both know, have a real taste for regicide. They have, no, that's not the right phrase, fratricide. They have slaughtered leader after leader after leader, even in our time in politics. Are they going to get rid of him?
The issue is they have a cause dethroning the leader, but they don't have a candidate. And it's very difficult to mobilize. Normally, if you're assaulted if there's a leadership challenge and you're in the leadership, you practice divide and rule. In this case, the Tories don't have to do divide and rule. The number 10 don't have to do divide and rule. The Tory party is divided. I think the thing which would get rid of the Prime Minister is if a leadership candidate like the Foreign Secretary or the Chancellor resigned and went to the back bench. That would be a challenge. And I've thought all the way through this, you see a total lack of nerve. You saw it with, David Miliband could be Prime Minister today had he had the steel to take out Gordon Brown. He didn't. You have to, you've got to have all the political characteristics that make you a great leader, but the one you have to absolutely have is the willingness to do the deed, to strike. And the Tories are waiting for somebody else the Tory leadership candidates are waiting for someone else to do it. And that is exactly what Boris Johnson wants. He is a man, a chancellor, who's always hoped that something will turn up. And he'll play for time, given time. And I just feel they will give him time. And I feel that he will be willing now. I wrote a speech that I thought he should have made when he had made his first apology, that he needs to abase himself. He needs to go further than he's ever gone, so far that people go, no, you can't take it all on yourself, Prime Minister. That's not all you. And then he should say, I have let down the voters and I've let down the country I love. And he should wrap himself in the flag. And then he should go and spend money. He should just, he's not going to stay Prime Minister unless he changes the political agenda. And he should be spending money. I think, I listened to your opening monologue. I think it's a disgrace the size of our British Armed Forces. Put aside what you were talking about, the smallness of them is disgraceful. He should spend money on that. He should spend money on from buses to the army. He should actually be spending money and should face down Rishi Sunak. And if Rishi won't spend that money, he should say, well, I've exposed you for what you are, a man who wants my job. Now have the balls to come for me. And so I think he needs to pivot. He needs to apologise, abase himself, then pivot into action, then burn up the road. But it's not clear that he wants to follow through on that, because he seems to be wanting to placate his crazy right-wingers in his party. So he doesn't want to spend money, even though that's his instinct. And so I think he's torn in this way. I think he gets through this week because I think they've got this fantasy, the Tories have got, that they'll let the local elections be bad on his watch. It's like, this is seeping out to be all about the Tory brand. And there's a point when you can't stop that. And I think they may have passed it already, but I think they may keep on testing that.
I said lastly, but forgive me, it occurs to me that I should ask you. Dominic Cummings was, in a way, an equivalent of yours in terms of position. He was very close to the Prime Minister, as you were yourself. He was dumped out unceremoniously with a cardboard box full of damning, one presumes, damning evidence. That was exceedingly foolish of Boris Johnson to dump Cummings for, it's said, his then girlfriend, now wife, Mrs. Johnson. Don't you think that was really stupid politics?
In politics, you should do what's in your own interest, not in the interest of your spouse. You need to be really hard-hearted and hard-headed. And what should have been done was a job should have been created for Dominic Cummings to review the MOD, to set up the research agency he wanted based on the Americans' DARPA Defense Research Agency, to put him in charge of GCHQ, do something where he was occupied but was really subject to an NDA and wasn't going to leak against you. It was always obvious what Dominic Cummings would do if he was pushed out, and he has got all of the hallmarks of a spiteful, badly thought through decision forced upon Boris, or enjoined by Boris, but started not by Boris himself, because you need to think, don't put the people who know all about you out in the cold, and don't put people who've already, what Dominic Cummings brought down Cameron with the Brexit referendum, brought down Theresa May using Boris Johnson, so he's going for his hat trick. And after this, does he get to keep it?
John McTiernan, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Much obliged to you.